Most career advice begins with the same diagnosis. If you want to succeed, you need to focus. Pick one thing, commit early, block out distractions. And if you struggle to do that, the explanation feels obvious. You're unfocused, undisciplined, or haven't found your real passion yet. This idea is everywhere. It's said so confidently that it feels almost scientific. But what if this diagnosis is incomplete? What if the problem isn't that you can't focus, but that you're being asked to focus in a way that doesn't fit how your mind actually works? Because if you're here, you're probably not afraid of effort. You can work hard. You can obsess. You can go deep. Your issue isn't motivation. Your issue is choosing what deserves that level of commitment, without feeling like you're cutting off every other version of yourself. And that distinction matters more than most advice admits. Having many interests doesn't feel like freedom when you're living inside it. It feels heavy. You look at your life and see too many possible paths: creative paths, technical paths, intellectual paths. And each one feels meaningful in a different way. Choosing one doesn't feel exciting. It feels like loss. You're not confused about what you like. You're overwhelmed by how much of yourself you recognize in different directions. So you hesitate, you research, you prepare, you keep options open a little too long. From the outside, people may say you're scattered or indecisive. They might call you a dabbler, a jack of all trades. But inside, that label feels unfair, because you're not avoiding depth. You're afraid of committing deeply to the wrong thing and waking up years later wondering who you might have been. The quiet fear isn't failure, it's regret. And over time, that fear turns inward. You start to wonder if your curiosity of the thing that once felt like your strength is actually what's holding your career back. That fear didn't come from nowhere. It came from advice that worked very well in a different world. For a long time, careers were built in stable environments. Industries changed slowly. Roles were clear. If you specialized early and stayed consistent, the system rewarded you. That advice wasn't wrong. It was context dependent. But today's world works differently. Roles blend, skills expire faster, new fields appear at the edges of old ones. In this kind of environment, the rules aren't always clear, and feedback often arrives late. When you apply old career logic to a changing world, some people thrive, and others feel broken for no good reason. The problem isn't that specialization is bad. The problem is treating it as the only respectable way to build a career. When a mind built for exploration is judged by the rules of narrow focus, it will always look like failure, even when it's actually adapted for a different kind of game. Careers have shapes. Instead of thinking in terms of job titles or passions, it helps to think in terms of shapes. Some careers are built like a single pillar. One deep skill, refined over decades. That shape is powerful in stable environments. Others try to be wide without ever going deep. A little of everything, but no solid ground. That shape creates anxiety because there's nothing firm to stand on. But there's another shape that rarely gets talked about. A career built from multiple deep pillars, developed over time, connected by broad curiosity. Not all at once, not randomly, sequentially. This is where having many interests stops being a liability and starts becoming a structural advantage. When you go deep in more than one domain, even if it happens across different seasons of your life, you start to see patterns others miss. You don't just collect skills, you collect ways of thinking. Someone who understands both data and storytelling doesn't just analyze numbers, they translate meaning. Someone who understands psychology and design doesn't just make things look good, they shape decisions. These combinations are rare, not because they're impossible, but because most people are told they shouldn't even try. Curiosity, when paired with depth, becomes a kind of connective intelligence. Your many interests form a library of metaphors and mental models that you can draw from when facing new problems. You're not just applying knowledge, you're transferring insight. In a world that changes quickly, the ability to connect ideas across domains often matters more than knowing one narrow thing perfectly. But this only works if one critical mistake is avoided, trying to build everything at once. When people with many interests struggle, it's rarely because they explore too much. It's because they never give any one direction enough time to settle. Depth still matters, just not forever. The sustainable approach is to commit in seasons. Choose one direction and take it seriously. For now. Not as a final identity, not as a lifelong contract. Long enough to understand the fundamentals, long enough to solve real problems, long enough that you're no longer a beginner. When curiosity fades because understanding has replaced novelty, you haven't failed. You've completed a phase. Moving on at that point isn't quitting, it's graduating. This is how multiple interests stack instead of compete. This also changes how you think about work itself. Your job doesn't have to express every part of who you are. For a mind that thrives on exploration, it often shouldn't. A stable role that pays the bills and doesn't drain all your cognitive energy can be a strategic asset. It creates surplus attention, the real resource you need to build your other pillars. When all your energy is spent just surviving the workday, curiosity has nowhere to go. But when stability is handled, exploration becomes intentional instead of frantic. The goal isn't to escape structure, it's to use it. There's one more piece that makes this work long-term. If your mind generates ideas faster than it can act on them, trying to hold everything internally will eventually overwhelm you. You need somewhere for ideas to live outside your head, a simple system, notes, a place to capture interests without needing to act on them immediately. This frees you from the fear of forgetting and allows connections to form over time. An interest you explored briefly years ago may suddenly become useful in a context you couldn't predict, but only if you saved it. When you stop demanding that every curiosity turn into immediate action, you give yourself permission to explore without guilt. Over time, something subtle happens. What once felt like chaos begins to look like a pattern. The scattered pieces start to connect. And the story you tell yourself changes. You're no longer someone who can't choose. You're someone who builds meaning across domains. You're not unfocused. You're integrative. The career superpower isn't having many interests by itself. It's learning how to develop them without fighting who you are. Not quickly, not perfectly, but deliberately. So instead of asking, why can't I just pick one thing? A more useful question might be, what kind of work becomes possible when I stop trying to be less curious and start being more intentional with it? That question doesn't demand an answer right away. But for someone like you, it has a way of staying with you. And that's often where real clarity begins.